When humanity loses its belief in a cosmic order, it loses its compass. To find a solution to this crisis, a man named Zarathustra leaves his home and retreats into the mountains. For 10 years, he sits in absolute isolation, absorbing the silence and gathering his wisdom. Eventually, his cup runs over with wisdom. He realizes he cannot keep this insight to himself. He descends back into the human valleys to offer mankind a new goal to strive for. He walks straight into the local marketplace to address the general public directly. This is where people gather to trade, gossip, and live their ordinary lives. He stands before the crowd and begins to preach. His message is radical. He tells them that man is not an endpoint, but a bridge. Humanity is something that must be overcome. We have to evolve past our current stagnant state and become the Superman, a being who creates their own meaning and values from scratch. To emphasize the stakes, he warns them of the alternative, the last man. This is a pathetic creature who has discovered comfort and wants nothing else. The last man blinks in apathy, avoids all physical or mental struggle, and has no grand desires. They just want a little pleasure for the day and a little pleasure for the night. The crowd's reaction is immediate. They laugh. They shout at him to give them this last man, to turn them into these comfortable, blinking creatures. They want nothing to do with the struggle of the Superman. Looking at their mocking faces, Zarathustra realizes a hard truth. He cannot speak to the herd. The masses are hopelessly attached to their decaying comforts. He abandons the idea of preaching to the masses. Instead, he decides to seek out fellow creators, individuals willing to break away from the herd. To explain how a person actually becomes a creator, he outlines a 3-stage spiritual evolution. First, the spirit becomes a camel, taking on the heavy traditions of the past. But in the loneliest desert, it transforms into a lion, aggressively destroying old moralities. Finally, it becomes a child, an innocent, unburdened new beginning to create entirely new values. True philosophical elevation demands the active destruction of inherited beliefs. You clear the slate to ensure that whatever you build next is genuinely your own. Years pass. Zarathustra wanders, gathers disciples, and eventually retreats back to his solitude. He knows that before the Superman can truly be born, he has to confront the darkest, most terrifying thought of his philosophy. He describes a hallucinatory vision. He is walking up a steep, dreary path, carrying a dwarf on his shoulders, the spirit of gravity. They arrive at a gateway, and inscribed above it is the name, This Moment. Looking at this visual representation of time, he articulates the eternal recurrence. 2 eternal lanes meet at this gateway, the infinite past and the infinite future. He proposes that time is not a straight line, but a perfect circle. Every pain, every joy, every single event will repeat infinitely, exactly as it has happened before. The horror lies in the details. If time loops perfectly, then every moment of human smallness, every blink of the last man, and every instance of stagnant apathy returns for eternity. There is no final exit, no eventual salvation to wait for. Confronting this infinite loop of mediocrity breaks Zarathustra. He falls into a profound physical sickness, collapsing in his cave for 7 days, completely suffocated by his disgust at the inescapable smallness of man. Recovery begins when Zarathustra accepts the logic of the circle. He realizes that if all moments are linked, then wanting a single second of joy requires wanting every second of suffering that led to it. He pushes through his disgust to reach the 7 seals, a state where he looks at the totality of existence, the great and the small alike, and says yes and amen to its eternal return. He realizes that true greatness doesn't come from hoping for a better world. It comes from embracing this life exactly as it is. You have to accept the suffering and the mediocrity without leaning on the crutch of a promised afterlife. Years later, Zarathustra is an old man. Walking through his mountains, he hears cries of distress. He tracks them down and finds the higher men, 2 kings, a retired pope, a magician, a disillusioned scientist. They represent the absolute elite of the old world, but now that God is dead, they are entirely broken and lost. He invites them into his cave to shelter them, but doing so triggers his final, most dangerous temptation: pity. He feels a deep, agonizing sympathy for these suffering relics of a bygone era. Leaving them alone for a moment, he returns to a tragicomedy. The higher men have relapsed. Desperate for something to revere, they have fallen back into their old superstitious habits and are on their knees, burning incense and worshipping a donkey. Zarathustra interrupts this absurd festival, but the mood shifts. The ugliest man, the one who suffered the most under the gaze of the old god, suddenly experiences a profound rush of contentment. For the first time, he loves the earth, and he demands to live his entire life once more. This prompts the drunken song. The higher men realize that while pain asks for things to end, true joy intrinsically desires eternity. Joy doesn't want an end to suffering. It wants everything to return, deeply entwined and exactly as it is, forever. Zarathustra recognizes that his pity was a trap anchoring him to their past. We can't elevate humanity by mourning what we lost. We have to foster a joy so powerful that it validates the sheer act of existing. Zarathustra wakes the next morning and steps out of his cave. He is greeted by a sign he has been waiting for: a laughing lion, surrounded by a flock of doves. It is the physical manifestation of his victory. He has finally overcome his pity. Inside the cave, the higher men hear the lion's roar and flee in terror, vanishing instantly. It proves that the old world and its representatives cannot survive in the presence of Zarathustra's new, uncompromising morning. Nietzsche uses this allegory as a direct philosophical provocation. He forces the reader to confront their own values by presenting a world where the only authority left is the individual. His final mandate is clear. You have to destroy the decaying values holding you back. You have to overcome your own blinking apathy. You must build a life so magnificent and so true to yourself that you would gladly hit replay on it for all eternity. Nietzsche defines the Superman through the perpetual, joyful act of self-overcoming. It is a state of constant growth, fueled by the realization that the power to create meaning has always rested entirely with the individual.